KoRn played a pretty special gig in London's Gunnersbury Park to 40,000 KoRn fans. It was the biggest headline show KoRn have ever done, and they were celebrating their 30-year anniversary of being a band. That is a long time. And as I was at the gig, I was realizing that I've been listening to this band for 25 years. They were the first heavy rock band I ever got into. And it was an absolute treat to see how iconic they really are. And I'll get into details of that later on as I review their live set. But first, there were some support bands on earlier on in the day. So it was in Gunnersbury Park. It was 30 degrees Celsius, I think, at its peak. It was absolutely hot as balls. But always nice to spend an afternoon in the sunshine listening to heavy music. Now, first up was Loathe. I'm not the biggest fan of Loathe. I think they're a little bit on the dreary side, and I'm a Sleep Token fan, right? It's just different strokes for different folks. But that's the best I've seen them sound live. Actually, the sound was pretty good, and there was a song in there that I quite enjoyed. I think they work really well when there are scream vocals. The clean vocals, not so much to my taste, a little bit on the weaker side. But lots of people like Loathe. They seem to go down really well, and they suited the lineup for sure. After them was Wargasm, and again, I'm not really a fan of Wargasm. I'm a fan of loads of bands. I like way more bands than I dislike. Wargasm is just not on my list of bands I enjoy. I think they've got some interesting ideas, but it's quite cluttered, it's kind of chaotic, and I think their songs feel like in each section, they go with the first idea they have and just go with that. There's some great guitar riffs within there, and they put on a fairly lively stage show, right? They're running up and down the stage and doing their best to engage the crowd. And, the crowd at the front seemed to enjoy it. I'm just not really into it. I think the vocals were a little bit on the weak side for the female vocalist, whose name is Milky Way, I think. It's just not quite what I'm enjoying. There's some potential there. I think they need better songs. After them was one of my favorite bands. In fact, I got one of their t-shirts at the concert. Spiritbox, who went on and opened up with Cellar Door, which is like if not one of the heaviest songs that they have in their catalog. That was a pretty strong start, and it sounded pretty great overall. Now, I've seen Spiritbox live a couple of times before, and this was not the best that I've seen them live. And it was quite odd that was the case, because they are a very, very good band. They know how to perform on a large stage, but something wasn't quite right, and I think Courtney LaPlante, the vocalist, might have been nursing some kind of vocal issue or a cold or something, because her scream vocals were great, they were completely on point, but her singing, she actually hit one completely wrong note, which is unheard of for her. And you could tell in some of the choruses, she was making sure she would hit the pitches of each of the words, but the transitions between those notes were kind of cut off in unusual ways. It did feel like she was saving her voice where she could and not going full force. Interestingly, the bassist, who was doing backing vocals, had a stronger melodic singing voice that day than Courtney's. Now, some of that might have been in the mix, so Courtney's vocals at times were a little bit lower in the mix compared to the backing vocals, which is an odd choice. But also just the force that he was able to go with, she could normally do, but at that gig, it just wasn't quite there, which is unusual. But scream vocals, they engage a different part of the vocal cords, so perhaps that is what's going on, and they had the full force of that. But the singing, her voice could not be trusted. You could feel her kind of just getting through that, or at least that's how it seemed. Because I have seen them before, and they've been incredible. They didn't come across that well, but if you didn't know how good Courtney's singing vocals are beforehand, then you would not really necessarily notice, because she still did a decent job overall, and they got through the set, and they played a wonderful set of really heavy songs, as well as some of their great kind of catchier, more melodic singles like Jaded and Circle With Me. My favorite bit was when they said, all right guys, we're getting a bit tired up here, we're gonna have a slow song now, you can take a breather, and then we'll come back after that. And their slow song was Holy Roller, which is one of their heaviest songs. That was a nice move, I enjoyed that. It's always a treat to see the legend that is Courtney LaPlante on stage doing some vocals, and Mike Stringer on the guitar doing godlike things on his instrument. So I enjoyed Spiritbox. Not as good as they can be, not at their absolute full power, but they're a great band. It was good. Now, after them was supposed to be Denzel Curry, who I'm not really familiar with. Seems like a hip-hop rap artist. Unfortunately, they lost their voice, apparently, and so they did not perform. So it actually went, instead of going to them, straight on to the headliner of KoRn, after that. Now, this was the 4th time I've ever seen KoRn live, and that's not that many times over the 25 years that I've been a fan of theirs. But when they started out, they played a couple of newer songs I'm not as familiar with or into necessarily, and the sound was good. It's always cool to see the legendary band KoRn live on stage, but I was kind of thinking, all right, this will be decent. I'm sure there'll be a couple songs that I like, but I'm in for whatever performance they do. We'll see how we go. But actually, after those 2 songs, the set list just got stronger and stronger and more amazing. And it dawned on those of us in the crowd just how incredibly iconic this band is, and how it's amazing to see them finally seemingly getting some of the recognition that they deserve for being such innovative and influential musicians and songwriters in the rock universe. So much of what they did, either no one else still does to this day, which I'll get to, or massively influenced other bands from then on. I mean, Spiritbox called them out in their set, saying that they're one of their major influences in their music to this day. And there are a few ingredients as to why that is the case. A very unique vocalist, it's very helpful. No one else sounds like Jonathan Davis. He has a very unique way of doing things. And also his scat singing. Who else did that? Who else does that in the modern era? I don't know that anyone really does. It is a KoRn thing. If you start doing that, people think you're just ripping off KoRn. That is an iconic thing to do. Their slow, haunting lead guitar parts also are completely iconic. They were the first band, I'm pretty sure, to be wearing Adidas on stage in a metal band, and now Adidas sponsor them. What an incredible full circle that has happened there. And I was enjoying Jonathan Davis's very sparkly sequined green Adidas tracksuit. There was also a rawness and a vulnerability and a humanity to their vocals, to the extent that I can't think of any other bands of that era that were doing it quite to the level that they were back when their self-titled album. There's some really disturbing stuff going on that record, both in the lyrics and also in kind of this odd voice skit thing they had at the end of the album. I remember listening to that when I was 12 years old, and just thinking, what is this crazy, dark, and unusual and scary world? I must have played that self-titled album at least 30 times a day. I just couldn't get enough. I was trying to understand this bizarre, heavy, but really interesting and groovy music. And that started my love affair of heavy metal ever since. And I remember listening to that when I was 12 years old thinking, man, how cool would it be to one day see this band live? And now I've done it 4 times, and it's still... every time I see them, and it hit me again at Gunnersbury Park, I can't believe I got to see this live from these guys on stage making this totally unique music. And they played some songs from that self-titled album, which really helped to anchor for me the sort of breadth of influence they've had on the music scene and also in my life over the last 25 years. The first song of that album they played was Clown, which is a much-loved single, I believe, that came out a long time ago. Great song. At some point in the set, there was a drum solo, which was pretty fun and interesting. It wasn't the greatest drum solo in the world, but it served a fun showmanship sort of purpose. But at the end of that solo, they rounded it into just going on the ride cymbal for the intro to Blind, which again, one of the most iconic sounds in the metal universe is that ride cymbal intro for Blind. Just amazing. That song goes so hard live as well. That was, top 3 songs I think of the set. And at one point during about the middle or towards the end of the show, they all left the stage for a period of time, and you could hear someone backstage trying out their bagpipes, because another one of the most iconic and inimitable things that KoRn have done is introduce bagpipes to the world of heavy metal. So Jonathan Davis comes on stage with his set of bagpipes, as he's done in other gigs before. I think they must do it at every gig they do now, and does the intro for Chutes and Ladders, which is a whole mental nursery rhyme heavy rock song. And it's just amazing. No one has thought to do that since. Maybe for good reason. There can't be that many songs where a bagpipe will really just smooth it out and make it make sense. But that intro really works. It's epic. And we're missing some of this, I think, in the modern era of bands taking absolute leaps in the dark to try something completely unique and different. Like, fuck it, I'm going to learn and play the bagpipes here, and we're going to add that to the song. Even if you don't like the sound of that, you have to respect that it's different and interesting as a result. And we need more of that in the world, a little bit more variety. And the fact that they did that 25 years ago and are still doing it now, is really cool. But also, another song they played off the self-titled album, which I was not expecting, was Divine. Way late in the set. It was, I think, their second last song. And that was absolutely incredible. But obviously, they had all the other hits as well. They had Falling Away From Me, Here to Stay, Freak on a Leash, which is their biggest hit single that really launched them into the stratosphere. And most people who don't even know any KoRn songs probably know that one. They played Somebody Someone from Issues, which is amazing. They played Y'all What a Single. And one of my favorite songs, Got the Life, was earlier on in the set as well, which was fantastic with that offbeat open hi-hat. It was just awesome. They sounded phenomenal. They play with such force and energy and creativity and intensity. You just gotta respect it. And one of the things that really impressed me about them, that I also was impressed by when I saw Green Day earlier in the year, was they don't play to a click track, which most bands these days do. I'm not knocking the click track, because if you have important elements in a song that you cannot reproduce live exactly, but you know it's integral to the music, sure, have a click track, put that through the back track, makes sense. KoRn definitely did not play to a click, because there's moments where they would allow the crowd to sing a certain moment by themselves, and the drums would come in slightly delayed because the drummer's listening to the crowd feedback, and there's a little bit of lag when that happens. And it's so impressive how well paced the drumming is without a click. And I think that's the difference maker. Great drummers can, without a click, play the right tempo for the song. Decent drummers, but not great drummers, will probably play things slightly too fast. I've been a victim of doing this in the past. You can ask band members of mine, I've definitely played some songs too fast. Right? That's a discipline you have to learn over time. And great drummers are able to conquer that challenge. And Ray from KoRn absolutely crushed the pacing of the drums. Although there was one song, interestingly, I think they've played slightly too slow, but it actually made it incredibly epic. I think it was Clown. They played that a little slow, and it was so sick. I loved it. But that looseness without the click, it just highlights how professional, brilliant this entire band is, that they sound massive and on time, and as if nearly on record, despite the fact that it's completely generated just by their guitars and drums and voice. That is incredible, really, to witness and to hear. And those cool, crazy electronic sounds that they have that modern bands also enjoy, they're creating those just with their lead guitar parts. They're kind of unusual, high up in the fretboards, bits and pieces that are, again, like iconic for KoRn. Gives it the whole breadth of interest live as a sound as well. It was so impressive and eminently satisfying to listen to and enjoy, especially as a KoRn fan of 25 years. And to see 40,000 people enjoying this all together was amazing, because KoRn, when they came out and they got popular in the, in the wave of new metal, they did fairly well, and for a time people thought, oh, this is great, we all are enjoying this. But quite quickly, for some reason, KoRn became a very uncool band to like. I don't know how or when that happened, but it was definitely not a band you could say, oh, what music are you into? Like KoRn. But like, KoRn? I think because it got so big so quickly, it seemed like it was a sort of trend fad. That, like, why are you still into that? But the influence that they've had on the metal universe has been massive, and they just haven't really had the due for that. But to see 40,000 people in this park, outdoors, on this beautiful hot summer day, celebrating the genius that was KoRn just in London, was amazing. And now people are starting to see, you see much more KoRn merch around the place. And people are going, yeah, actually, KoRn are legit. And they've been going for 30 years, and they've produced consistently excellent music. Now, there's some songs that aren't particularly wonderful, right? You're not going to like every single song that a band produces, probably. That's very rare if that happens. But they have managed to produce really great singles over the years, and some excellent sort of middle of the album tracks that really stand out as well. So despite the heaviness and the darkness of their music, it was a joyful experience to be part of the crowd watching that iconic set from KoRn live in Gunnersbury Park. One-day festivals are very wonderful things, and I think probably because I'm getting old now, I'm not trying to get to the front to get as close as I can. What I'm interested in these days is good sound and comfort. So I was behind the sort of tower relays speakers, and there was plenty of room around, so there was no one like bouncing into me, which was great. Sound was impeccable from where we were, and you get a decent view because there's screens as well that give you the kind of zoom ins from there. But it was a pretty nice green bowl area for everyone to enjoy the bands. There were plenty of food stands. There were large bars, which you didn't have to queue that long to get the drinks there. The only horrible bit was the toilets were a fucking mess. The queues for the women's toilets was ungodly long. I actually think that's like a human rights issue. It's fucking crazy how long women are having to queue at some of these festivals. And the men's wasn't that much better, right? There was actually urinals, which are very quick to use normally, but there's just one entrance. And there's no like in this way, out this way. So everyone's trying to go in at the same time as everyone's trying to leave. And it was just the slowest, most ridiculous nonsense of a logistical nightmare that it did not need to be. So other than that, though, Gunnersbury Park was pretty good. Now, a marker of how successful and how respected KoRn are now is how much they can charge for merchandise. There was a great looking hoodie. There was like a pink hoodie that was £100, which is a lot for a hoodie. But there was a t-shirt that was £100, and it was like sheer. So it wasn't even a fully threaded t-shirt. It's like a slightly mesh t-shirt. £100. So they're doing all right for themselves. I saw someone wearing it, and it looked all right. But I don't have the body confidence to be like, you can see my amazing KoRn t-shirt and also my belly underneath. I'm not interested in that. But anyway, big tip of the cap and respect to KoRn for everything they've done for the heavy rock world. Even people that don't like them, you have to recognize the contribution that they've made and the influence that they've had on some incredible artists of the modern era. And it was an absolute delight to see them play some of their greatest hits from their back catalogue live with 40,000 other fans in Gunnersbury Park. Undoubtedly, one of the most iconic bands of all time. Now, if this is your first time seeing one of my reviews of live gigs, do consider subscribing if you want to see more of these in future. I review live concerts and gigs and festivals in the rock universe, but also check out the latest new music in rock and metal and kind of react and review to those. And I have a podcast where I interview bands or other rock industry professionals. So hopefully you'll see another video of mine at some point. Thank you for watching this. Let me know in the comments if you were there, what your experience was like. I'd love to find out a bit more about other people's time at that amazing gig of KoRn's.